What's up, everyone? Alex here, and welcome to my little corner of the internet. I have changed my backdrop. I don't know what that looks like. Let me bring up the little capture software. Okay. I can, put this on a platter. Yeah, it's been weird. I've been very absent, and the few times that I have uploaded, the last several times, I have had no energy whatsoever, but we're here, we're queer, and we're talking about gender. It's always gender. Gender troubleshooting. So I have this tag on the YB3 blog. That's yourbygenderbigbrother.tumblr.com. I wish I had thought to shorten it, but now this is what I link everywhere on my social media, and I do not want to change it. If YB3.tumblr.com could redirect to here, then sure, I would love to change some things up. But for now, it's got a very long name. So a lot of people who watch my YouTube channel probably don't read my blog. It's just a Tumblr blog. It's where pretty much all of my work is right now, is on Tumblr, making flags and answering asks and staying connected with the community, updating people on new videos or new issues of the zine. It's all on Tumblr right now. And I have this tag called Gender Troubleshooting where people will send me basically gender crises or, just asking for advice, and then I answer, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what I do, answering asks and then putting them under this tag in case it might help somebody figure themselves out. Now, I've already answered a lot of these on my blog, but I really like the chance to bring it over here in case nobody has seen this yet. I'm going to be redoing the gender troubleshooting videos. I'm not going to be doing the same format that I was doing originally. That wasn't working out. So whatever is titled Gender Troubleshooting on the channel right now, that's the old format. This is what I want to do with it instead. So, username Pizzaroni Pasta says, "Hi, after a period of questioning, I recently started identifying as bigender, and so far it looks like that's probably what I'm going to stick with. There are some things I'm yet to figure out, so I'm still not done questioning, but I'm working through most of it with just introspection. However, there's something that I keep coming back to where, although I found the answers, I would like some reassurance. I'm specifically bigender flux, my two identities being man and woman. They manifest in different ways and at different intensities at different times. Sometimes one gets overshadowed by the other. In the most extreme such instances, I tend to experience something like imposter syndrome, where I just can't shake a fear that I'm not experiencing one of my genders enough to be bigender. It's especially bad when my AGAB overshadows my other gender. That leads me to worry that I might be just a cis guy who spends a lot of time in trans circles and is being insincere due to a perceived pressure to fit in. I know this isn't true, and when I feel this way, I have to consciously remind myself of times I felt unambiguously bigender, and of times I've noticed my gender identity fluctuating. Having to deal with these recurring identity crises has not been fun. So what I'm here to ask is this: is it at all common for bigender people to experience imposter syndrome over being bigender, especially when they're still adopting the identity? Knowing that this is a normal experience would bring me so much peace of mind. Heck, if even a single person can relate to this, I'd be incredibly relieved. If not, then I'd appreciate any advice, preferably closet-friendly, or alternative reassurance you can give instead." So, imposter syndrome is a thing that tends to bleed into many aspects of our lives, our hobbies, our goals, our professions, our schooling, our knowledge, our language acquisition, our art style, everything. And gender is no exception to that. It's a very common experience that trans people will feel like they are one type of gender and then realize that they're not all the way that gender, or they still have some kind of attachment to their assigned gender at birth. And it tends to make us feel like we might be faking this. Like maybe we are just trying to be special and take on a label that doesn't belong to us just so we could feel, important or unique or special. But that a lot of trans people will still somewhat identify with their assigned gender at birth. There's AMAB demi boys, AFAB demi girls. There's gender fluid people who will oftentimes, feel like a man and they were assigned male at birth. And there's plenty of people who they consider themselves to be genderless in some capacity, mostly agender, but then they still feel like they have a connection to their assigned gender at birth. So it's not uncommon that bigender people might feel this kind of way about their identity. A very common experience of being bigender is being both male and female. And, seeing as people are assigned either male or female at birth, that leaves a lot of room to think that maybe you're just faking it, or that, maybe you're not really bigender after all, because a bigender person who is both male and female will eventually have an experience that feels much like their assigned gender at birth. But that's very normal. That's a normal part of the transgender community. Sometimes you have that connection to your AGAB, and sometimes you're very far removed from it. And there are people who are experiencing both of these things and everything in between. So you're not faking. You are definitely not faking. Your experiences are your own, and only you can decide if those are genuine experiences to you. And, we don't really get people in this community faking an identity for attention. That's not a thing that really happens here. So you're doing fine. I suggest, get in touch with people who have the same experience, who are feeling the same way about themselves, doubting themselves, and make that connection with people so that you can find experiences that you can relate to. Anonymous says, "Hey, I'm starting to question gender stuff. I know for a fact that I'm agender/neutroi/genderless. I'm always agender. It doesn't fluctuate. However, I've recently learned to accept that I'm transmasculine. I've thought about terms like demi-boy and agender boy, boy X, etc. Sometimes I'm fine with them, other times maybe all of the time, I think is what they meant to say. But otherwise I question it, but I've also recently come to accept that my masculinity doesn't make me less agender, since it doesn't change or seem as questionable. I'm wondering if I'm in some way bigender, gender fluid. Any input is greatly appreciated." So the terms masculine, feminine, neutral, xenic, epicene, which is androgynous, these act more like layers to your identity. I've talked about layers of identity. I consider gender alignment to work the same way as well. You could be completely genderless and aligned with a certain gender experience. It's kind of the same way with transmasculinity, transfemininity. Sometimes you are completely genderless, but you feel a connection to being masculine or feminine, and it doesn't change your gender. Transmasculine and transfeminine aren't necessarily genders in and of themselves. They can be, but not usually with the way it's used. It just means that you're masculine or feminine, depending on, how you want to define those words. Transmasculine can mean that you are transitioning toward a more masculine gender expression. It can also mean that you just present more masculinely, and that can mean anywhere from very soft mask to hyper masculine and everything in between. And it has nothing to do with your gender most of the time. A lot of our gender expressions are reflections of our genders or influence our genders in some way, but in this case, it seems like this person is very connected with masculinity and still being genderless or neutroi or agender. They kind of gave me a few terms. So terms like agender mask or just masculine agender. They did say that they weren't like they were okay with terms like demi boy or agender boy, but those aren't inherently masculine experiences. So you could just be a masculine agender person, and at the end of the day, it is entirely up to you what is most comfortable for your experience, like what you want to call yourself. For the sake of staying within the same realm of topics, I have a similar, agender person like sharing their experience and stuff. So I'm going to probably end it with this anonymous ask, even though it's similar to the other one that I just read. This person says, for a while, I've been considering myself trans, masc, and agender, which does fit, but I don't know. I feel like a man too. Yes, agender essentially means being genderless or having a lack of gender, depending on who you ask. I'm genderless, and I have a lack of gender to an extent. Like, if you ask me what my gender is deep down, it's like my brain doesn't compute. But I do enjoy being perceived as a guy and am connected to masculinity. But lately, the liking to be perceived as a guy has been more pushy, for a lack of a better word. But I know without a doubt I'm not a trans man, though, because that isn't me, and I know that because it doesn't feel right to me. I'm a man, but I'm also not a man. I'm genderless, but also genderful. Is this some sort of gender fluid? Am I bigender, trigender, etc.? I don't know anymore, and I'm wondering if you've ever heard of this or know a label that describes this or something, because I'm very confused. I'm so sorry if this doesn't make sense. Never apologize. I love getting asks like this, even if it's a mess. And like I said, you can be both agender and transmasculine. Gender is a mess. Gender tends to be all over the place, and that is just fine. Our labels don't always match up with what our experiences are, and you'd be searching your entire life trying to find a label that perfectly describes your experience. Gender is so diverse. It's so changeable. I don't know the word that I'm looking for right now, but there's a lot that goes into having a gender or having a lack of gender or something in between or some mix of the two. A term that does come to mind is Libra masculine, which is being mostly agender but having a connection to masculinity. You don't have to use that word, but there is that word. Libra gender is, being mostly agender and having a connection to another gender. So there are labels for that, but you don't necessarily have to, use Libra masculine. You don't even have to call yourself masculine. I personally feel connected to extrinity. That's gender expression outside of male and female. It is any kind of experience outside of male, or feminine and masculine is what I meant to say. But I don't include that when I'm talking to people about my genders. I don't say, well, I'm male and neutroi, and it's mostly male, and I feel some connection to extrinity, and it might not be neutroi. Maybe it's something else that I haven't discovered yet that's outside of masculine and feminine. I don't know. But you don't necessarily need to have a word for all these different parts of your identity. You could just say, I'm agender. And if someone asks any further, then you can explain. In a lot of spaces online, a lot of queer spaces, you might feel the need to be like, oh, this is what my agender experience is like. But you don't necessarily have to do that. A lot of the time, I just say I'm a non-binary guy. Outside of what I do on the internet, that's how I explain it. And then if people have any questions about it, then I'd love to, further extrapolate and explain all these different parts that come together to make up my experience. But you do not need a specific label or set of labels that will describe every little bit of your gender. But there are terms out there if you're interested. So that's pretty much it. I want to make this a regular thing. I want to make this a series that I could go back to, because I think I could get a lot of mileage out of, discussing, this person's having trouble with their experience with being trans or non-binary or genderless or anything at all. And here is my take on that experience, and here's my advice for dealing with your gender crisis. So I think I might be doing this a little bit more often, maybe make it a weekly series. I don't know yet. My life is kind of all over the place at the moment, so I've been sticking to purely just work online, either drawing or blogging. So it's weird to be back on camera, but I'm slowly acclimating myself to it. So I hope that helped somebody. A lot of experiences with being agender, with being masculine, and a lot of asking, am I bigender or something else? I get a lot of questions like that, but I do my best to, help whenever I can. But at the end of the day, you are who you say you are because you say you are that. I can't diagnose you with things. I can't assign you a gender. You kind of have to figure that one out on your own. So that's very good to keep in mind. And I'm signing off for now. See you later.